How did your high school crush turn out as an adult? Story 1. She worked with the Obama administration, I forgot in what capacity, and got married to some politician's son. Don't remember, don't care to look up. She's happy, and that's the only thing that matters. Oh, she was also our school's valedictorian. She was so busy with her job that she could not organize her high school reunion, so that's a plus. I wasn't head over heels for her, I admired her, but I knew I wasn't for her. Then there's another crush of mine. We ran into each other years after graduation at the grocery store. After talking, I asked her out to dinner at my house. I pulled out all the stops, I buy rainbow trout fillets and make all the fixings. 6:30 rolls around and I open the door and, who the hell is this man behind her? Oh, this is my fiance. She tells me, or neglected to tell me. It turns out they wanted to sell me on some MLM thing. She tried to cross the threshold. I put my arm out and asked them politely to leave. I turned away from the door and ate my saddest meal. Story 2. I had 3. 1 from the first 2 years and 2 from the last 2. The first one is now a female-to-male trans who walked to Colorado to join a cult or commune. He's now in Arizona recording rap albums. The second girl moved to Florida and lives in a swamp. She periodically hits me up to tell me she misses me, how dumb I was that I didn't follow through and that we should get married. The third was a missionary. She wasn't really into it when she grew up and came back home and I introduced her to one of my closest friends. They've been married for 15 years. 0 out of 3. Story 3. He had a roller coaster of a life. I admire him more than ever and more than most people I know, but can't wrap my head around why I ever found him physically attractive. Maybe it was always just his heart. By age 25, he had a PhD, a wife, and was a captain in the Navy. By 30, he had 2 PhDs, a small business where he made a metric ton of money, and his wife was pregnant. By 31, he was diagnosed with stage 4 skin cancer that swiftly spread to his lymph nodes, bones, esophagus, and a few other places. He was told he had minimal chances of making it 5 more years. Even with the best health insurance money can buy, it still basically wiped him out. 7 years later, he's living a comfortable but not extravagant life as a civilian contractor for the Navy. Same wife and 2 happy, healthy kids, and spends most of his free time advocating for better public health care. Story 4. Back when I was younger and crushing hard, I got an AOL Instant Messenger and had gotten my crush's screen name from a friend. I worked up the nerve to start a conversation with him, and soon after some awkward small talk, he sent me a message in Comic Sans, black background, red lettering, and French. I then went to Google for translation and found out he had just called me a pig in French. Being a seemingly awkward and chubby teenager, I was literally crushed. The heartbreak was only made worse by remembering that a few weeks prior, I had selected to take a French class the next year and couldn't change it. Years later, now that I've blossomed, he follows me on every social media platform and has reached out a couple of times to try and flirt or hang out. Hard pass. I believe he's moved away and is a teacher now. The now you want me because I'm hot attempt. I had a lady try that post-college. Maybe had she not been so mean about turning me down and asked her out before, I would have considered it. Story 5. I had a few in high school. One ended up moving away after sophomore year and no one knew why. She reached out to me when I had a mental breakdown online and said that she could understand what I was going through. Some messed up stuff happened to her, though she never said what specifically. I didn't ask further because it wasn't my business to pry. I'm not sure how she is now. Another got super hot after high school and she did a degree in science. Again, not sure where she is now, but I think she'd do alright. And the third works at a bank. We ended on bad terms, partially my fault. I found out she was making fun of me behind my back and had done so for months beforehand, so I sent her an angry message. Haven't seen her since then. Story 6. There was a girl I really admired for a while. She didn't really give me the time of day after freshman year, though. She was co-valedictorian and hugged me as I crossed the stage of graduation, and no one else got one. I'm still really confused about that 6 years later. She went on to med school and is either married or at least engaged to a guy she met there. Overall, she's doing really well, and I'm happy for her. Story 7. My wife's former crush randomly messaged her on Facebook one day. She hooked up with him on day 2. She's now my ex-wife. She's jobless, living with his mom, and I have the kids. My kids are 5 and 3, so they don't understand it much, but I'm hoping for the long game when they realize which parent was really there for them. My son still says hurtful things at times like, "I don't want to live with you anymore. I want to live with mommy," when he's angry. Well, kids do not understand, but believe me, when they get older and learn the truth, they will absolutely back you up. Stay strong. Story 8. My only girlfriend in high school is my crush. Her mom banned her from dating me after about a year because my girlfriend admitted to her mom that we were fooling around. This was about 20 years ago. She's still living with her mom, has no kids, and as far as I know, never again dated seriously after her mom broke us up. Still has the same job from high school, too. It's like her mom went way into protective overdrive and my former girlfriend never grew up. There are 3 women here on my street. They're my neighbors. They don't live on the street. They're old. One in her 50s and the others in their 60s, and never had a partner. 2 of them are sisters and live together. The other lives alone. They all had the same story. Their parents were too restrictive and never let them date anyone, so now they're old and are socially awkward. The sisters never even had a pet before their mom died. Now they have a cute puppy. I find their situation really sad. You should respect your parents, but you shouldn't follow only their will. Story 9. Still super hot. She married some loser and has a few kids with him. That loser was me. Just celebrated 22 years of marriage. You're not a loser if you bagged a hottie like her. She just has poor taste in men. Your wife and mine, both married lucky guys. Story 10. Still a 10 for looks. I'm sure she kept on as the amazing, kind person she is. She moved to another country, speaks multiple languages, and is more successful than I imagined. She seems happy, but we haven't talked since the time I told her how I felt about her about 20 years ago. Story 11. Went on to be a teenage model for hair products, graduated from Yale, toured Europe, and opened her own successful ceramics company that is sold worldwide and is often written up in magazines. Makes me feel like I messed up every time I think of her. Story 12. Pretty good. Seems to have her life together, although she had a few setbacks. She's gone back to uni since job prospects in her field kinda sucked, but seems to be really enjoying it. She's dating me though, so clearly her judgment sucks. Story 13. She's still a hot, successful, and wealthy entrepreneur, and married someone with the same first name as me and who quit his job to brew beer. I crushed on her for a bit. Didn't think she was interested, so I dated others. Then come to find out she crushed on me, senior year. I was too dumb and blind. We connected freshman year of college, and she wrote me letters, and by the time I wised up, she had moved on. No one to blame but myself. Story 14. Found her on Tinder, and she said I was hot. Pointed out that I was that loser she used to know in high school. Had a big laugh. Been a little over a year, and now we send each other memes and hang out occasionally when the pandemic isn't a mess. Story 15. My mom actually got her nails done by her. It talked about me, and she mentioned she had a crush on me in high school too, but we never thought to talk to each other. I called her, and 6 years later, she's pregnant with our first daughter. Best life ever. Story 16. I went to a Catholic school. He was an amazing singer and super popular. I was definitely not either of those things. Pretty sure he didn't know I existed. He went to study architecture and I wound up becoming an electrician. I'm a woman, by the way. A few years later, I'm at a job up on the ladder, pulling wire with one of the old-timers. The wire was stuck, so in good tradesman fashion, we were cussing up a storm at each other and the wire until it finally poked through. As I was pulling it out, I looked down to see this guy just staring at me from the bottom of the ladder. He didn't say anything. He just stared for a few moments and then walked away. You could tell he was trying to place me. I recognized him but couldn't place him for a few moments, and then I had a thought. That looked a lot like insert name, but a fat version. Later that day, I went and visited Mom too, and she had a church bulletin sitting on her counter. She had wandered away for a moment to do something, so I picked it up to kill some time until she was done. The bulletin had a section for announcing engagements and weddings, and my jaw dropped. Here was a photo of him with another girl from our high school, newly engaged. It had been him staring at me from the bottom of the ladder. His lady friend must have been feeding him really well because he plumped up good. I was happy for him all around, but didn't see him again after that day. Story 17. They both ended up as great guys. One has a huge family and is a minister. The other one has one child and is a college professor. Both married, nice people, and are happy. They were really good guys in high school and ended up being really good adults. I've got them both on Facebook and we keep in touch peripherally as we stayed friends over the years. Story 18. I remember walking up to her and asking if we could talk in private, and she said you can't say what you need in front of everyone. Her group of friends was all around, so I asked if she wanted to go on a date. She burst out laughing and said, Yeah, no. Life was rough, man. Looked her up last year and she's a cage fighter now. What? I guess she's always been a pro at hurting people for others' entertainment. Story 19. I had several. One of them is still a close friend and he became a primary care doctor. He also officiated my wedding. I have no idea what happened to another one. We didn't really have overlapping friend groups and she doesn't do social media. One of them is a math professor now, so that's pretty cool. My biggest crush in high school was my longtime neighbor. But it also fizzled out pretty quickly after we went to homecoming together. We're still good friends. Our families still keep in touch. He's also the guy who introduced me to my husband. Story 20. Still cute as heck. One of the kindest and most sensitive people I know, and still one of my best friends 15 years later. He's also recently divorced. His wife was gay but needed time and support to come to terms with it, and now he and I are slowly testing the waters. What started as a crush has matured into a deep and rich friendship. And, however it may unfold, I'm so grateful to have that relationship in my life. Story 21. She was aware then, over 30 years ago, but it was unrequited. We've been in casual contact through Facebook for the past several years, and once before when my wife, at the time, and I had her and her husband over for dinner. From what I can tell, she's grown into a person I probably would have been happy with. It's nice to see my high school perspective got a few things right. I think we'd be good friends if we lived closer. She appears to be living a good life with her husband and family. With my second wife, I'm happier than I could have ever imagined. Life worked out well. Story 22. They're all stunning and wildly successful. One in particular was a crush with a similar name to mine dating back from elementary school, which turned out to be the longest crush, an entire decade, I've ever had, and still appears in a looping dream sequence to this day. Especially after that bitter and frankly traumatic rejection before we parted ways when I confessed to her. At that point, we were classmates for 5 years and were going to different schools. After the separation, that's when the dreams began, and every time I woke up, I'm feeling emotional all over again. It took me another painful 5 years before I stopped crushing on her, but the dreams never stopped. Just last week, I had an update to the dream sequence where we actually talked for the first time in a decade of Groundhog Day levels of dreams. I know, it's pathetic. She's currently aspiring to be an architect and had an equally cool boyfriend, so I doubt she'd ever look back on her past as much as I do. I recently tried to follow her on her socials to get a life update from herself, but she won't accept my requests, so I'm not gonna force her. Story 23. One is still on active duty in the military, and she has a very successful career as an officer. I hope she continues to be. The other is successful in the arts, and I hope she continues to be that as well. Both are married to others who treat them well. I'm happy that they're both happy. My life is still going well here, so I have no hard feelings. Story 24. One of them is homeless and It's very sad. The other one is famous in his home country, is a best-selling author, and is regularly on TV. Don't have a crush on him anymore, but I'm glad we're still friends, and I'm happy about how well he's done. I guess they balance one another out. Story 25. I had 2 unrealized crushes in high school. One is a teacher and musician. She's married and has either 1 or 2 kids. We have kept in loose contact via social media and ran into each other at a New Year's Eve party shortly before she got married. I was introduced to her now husband as her favorite ex ever. He seemed like a decent dude and I'm happy for her. I believe the other became a US attorney. I've not heard from her since Google Plus almost became a social media thing. I imagine she's still very productive and would be disappointed in my life choices. Story 26. The guy I crushed on for 2.5 years did not end up turning out great. I'm still friends with his younger sister, so I know that he recently acquired his 3rd driving under the influence case and his 2nd divorce. He's currently living in his friend's basement and occasionally works for his friend's moving company as a mover, but only when he feels like it. He spends all his money on booze and owes the 2 moms of his 5 kids tons of child support. But man, was he hot in high school. My second crush in high school is the only reason I got over my first crush. He's currently doing great, mostly because he gets to be married to me for going on 20 years. Story 27. To be honest, this is more junior high crush than high school, but the story stands. Back on my first day of 7th grade, I had just moved up to a new school and I met a girl named Charlie. Well, Charlie had a twin, whose name was Christine. Charlie insisted on introducing me to Christine and yelled at her to come across the lunch area to us. Christine was very clumsy and tripped and almost landed on top of me. I fell head over heels. I, however, was way too afraid to say anything. A few years later, I get out of the Navy and go home and need a place to stay for a few days. Charlie offers Christine's spare room. I moved in and in the middle of the night, I saw Christine for the first time since 2007, and my jaw dropped. She was always attractive, but I guess she became a health nut after having 2 kids with her ex. Instantly, my crush reappeared, but this time, I had the post-Navy confidence and said something. Turned out she fell for me back in 2007 on that day too, but she was quite scared and nervous. Within a week of moving in, we were dating. It's been almost 4 years and we have added 2 more kids to the lot. Please send help, so many kids. Still very much in love and happy. She turned out great. A wonderful, smart, caring woman who was a sucker for dumplings and cheesy romances. Story 28. My fiance admitted that during high school, she had this massive crush on me. Saw how well I did with kids, but she never worked up the courage to tell me. Had a few girlfriends, but none of them lasted. Couldn't figure out if it was me or not. I call up my future fiance one day out of the blue. We hadn't spoken in a year. I asked if she would like to hang out. She asked me for help with her studies that night. I don't know why I called her in the first place. I never realized how pretty she was until she walked down the stairs to greet me. She was in her PJs, but that didn't matter to me. I was suddenly giddy. A few days later, she starts scrolling through her contacts, asking if there's anyone out there that I like. I told her yes, and she starts pointing out every vaguely female-like name. Hers was at the very bottom because of her last name. When she gets there, she responds, "All that's left is my name." Yep. 1, 2. Oh, it's me? Whoa, freak! That was 5 years ago. I honestly consider myself very lucky to be with her, with a number of things that had to go just right. Story 29. Divorced with 2 kids. I took her and her kids to lunch after meeting her in a mall one day. I hadn't seen her in over 10 years. We caught up on small talk and I asked the kids if they were hungry. They said yes. I just wanted to spend more time with my crush. After lunch, I asked if I could see her again. She laughed at me and said I could never go out with someone like you. She said the exact same thing to me in high school. That's my life. I'm not good enough for anybody. Story 30. We split sophomore year and went our separate ways, but still sporadically kept in touch as he prepared to go to Iraq. Years passed, he got divorced, and then my husband passed away in 2019 from a motorcycle accident. We reconnected and decided to hang out as friends. By the second date, we were inseparable. We live together and are incredibly happy. He's beyond supportive of my past grief that I still battle with sometimes. He's a great provider and the most loving, selfless person I've known in a very long time. I feel very lucky to have gotten a second chance with my high school crush and first high school boyfriend and first love. Story 31. First one has been married for almost 25 years to a beautiful woman and has 2 beautiful children. But he's a serial cheater and he dodged a bullet. The second one owns the farm next to me. He's been married for 15 years with a daughter, but he too constantly cheats on his wife. So again, dodged a bullet. Thank God I saw the pattern and broke the cycle. I've been married for 18 years to a good man, and the only cheating we do is financial. Still not cool, I know. I'm right where I'm supposed to be. Story 32. He died trying to save his friends. I'm sure he would have been a kind, righteous, responsible adult. Well, I had this huge crush on him in high school, and he was good at everything. He volunteered, he was great in sports, he danced. Well, he was an overall great person. I think he had a crush on me too. And he used to do these small romantic things for me, but never had a chance to tell each other. Anyway, we lived in an area with several waterfalls and caves, and this group of boys loved exploring those. My crush was not a good swimmer and he didn't go into the water that day. He was sitting on some rocks watching his friends have fun, along with another boy. His friends got sucked into a whirlpool, and this is what I never understood. Knowing he can't swim, he jumped in to save them. His other friend just watched. He didn't jump in. Of course, my crush couldn't make it out alive. I think they got the body after a few days. I always regretted not getting the chance to tell him how I felt, but hope he knew in his mind. Story 33. One ended up the pastor of a church with what seemed to be some views I don't entirely agree with. I haven't kept touch or kept track, so I'm not sure how far she takes those views. Her life just generally took a track mine wouldn't have meshed with. The other I dated in high school and multiple times after high school right up until I was almost 30. She's married with a kid now. She grew to be strong, smart, and creative. Really, we were dynamite together when things were good, but I don't know how much of the woman I loved remains now. I have no regrets about how it all turned out between us. I just sincerely hope her husband never has to deal with emotional manipulation or outright physical abuse he used to throw my way when things got bad between us. Story 34. Overdosed and died last year. I got to see him before he was taken off life support with a really good mutual friend we shared, an organ donor too. It was surreal seeing him dwarfed by all these machines. He had one of the largest hearts I've ever come across. Given that you mentioned he was an organ donor, I legitimately do not know if you mean this figuratively or literally.